Maya Angelou said, people won't remember what you did. They won't remember what you said, but they will remember what they felt when they were with you. This is so significant because humans are pack animals. And a lot of times when people feel lonely and they're in a relationship, whether it's with a partner, with a long-term marriage, or whatever it is, it's because they're suffering from dysregulation. Not only dysregulation about, all of themselves, but they're not able to socially or emotionally soothe themselves. They can't self-soothe. And they also are not good co-regulators with other people. We co-regulate with other people when we basically feed off of each other. When one person says something, we say something else. We're building an alliance, and humans need that. We call that connectedness, and it's so important. We see that connectedness in my field, in therapy. For example, when I do therapy with someone, I watch their eyes. I'm with them. I'm going to go with them on their story. When they talk to me, I stay right where they are. I don't jump ahead. I don't lag behind. I go with them. I'm walking with them so that I can help support them with encouraging words along the way. And this is the relationship that actually is the most healing, because as I stay with them, when someone stays with you, it supports you and it makes you feel more comfortable with being more and more vulnerable, more and more free to tell who you really are. You're censoring yourself less. Well, many times when people feel lonely in a marriage, they have lost this ability. It's easy for them to say, well, my partner just tunes out. He or she isn't available, or they're busy, or they do something. But many times it goes back to this concept. If you came from a bad family and you never were really able to co-regulate with your parents didn't give you the normal loving responses that a parent typically does, then you can get very warped ideas of what co-regulating is. And then you get into a relationship and your partner says, you're not supportive, you're cold, you're aloof, you withdraw when I become vulnerable. That's because you don't know how to co-regulate. You've never had good models for it. Many times, people who struggle from this notice in their interpersonal relationships too, that they can't really have best friends. People just don't hang with them forever. People they're just not comfortable. And the reason that happens is because they don't appropriately know how to co-regulate with someone. So I've got some things that you can do. If you're in a relationship now and you're like, man, I don't know if it's me, if it's my partner, or who it is. First of all, I'm going to ask you to go through these and maybe even write it down. Write down what your first thoughts are so you can later go back and journal on it. But secondly, I'm going to say, if I were you, I would invest in a therapist at this point, because I think therapy for co-regulation is so important. Not only is it important for co-regulation, but it's going to help you go back and maybe reparent some of those areas that you didn't get the appropriate response. And you will notice these right away when I talk about self-soothing. Because if you had poor parent models, then many times what happens is self-soothing or self-care for you is going to look like turning to a vice, maybe food, maybe alcohol, and that is not appropriate parenting, appropriate mentoring. And if you do that, it most likely is because you learned that and you're still going, that's your go-to vice. Okay, the first of the assignments is notice the ways in which you and your partner are co-regulating, the positive and the negative. For example, if when you say something, your partner automatically gets defensive, that would be a negative form of co-regulating. So right away, you would be able to write that down. If you say, I have a bad day at work, and your partner hugs you and says, I'm sorry, babe, what happened or explores that more, that would be a positive. So just go through the last 2 days, because there's going to be a lot of entries in that question. Secondly, notice how others in your life are affecting your emotional regulation, and notice how you might be affecting them. Do you set people off? Do you push triggers? Do other people push your triggers? What are those triggers? Do some people, you could be around them all day, you leave and you're just like, I feel so great. That person makes me feel so good about myself. That's an important positive thing to remember. And then ask yourself, what do they do? What do they do? And then know that, write that down so that you know a positive form of co-regulating with another person that perhaps you can practice in your other relationships. Thirdly, learn and practice strategies for self-soothing. We know a lot of times when you aren't co-regulating well that you're also not self-soothing. Self-soothing are those things that help you stay calm, you stay in love with yourself. Things like prayer, like meditation, going for a walk in nature, being around good family or friends who boost you up. Those are all forms of self-soothing, self-calming, listening to really good music that inspires you, makes you feel like you want to be a better person and have more things that you're invested in. Number 4, create a positive community for yourself. Remember, the family you were born into, you were born into. You had no choice. That's who you got. It was the lot. That's what you got. But who you create to put around you now, that's on you. And if you continue to create toxic communities around yourself, then you can't blame your parents. You can't go back and say, well, I was from an abused family. You can, but you always have a choice in when you let go of that, work through that, resolve that, and when you begin again to create something new. And lastly, focus on making changes in yourself instead of others. When you start saying things like, if only they would do this, or I wish somebody would fix them, or they're to blame, you lose personal power. What I want you to do is I want you to start looking at yourself. What do I do that pushes triggers? What do I do that offends people? What do I do that makes people anxious and want to react in maybe a terse or negative ways? These are keys. These are lights for you. And if you follow the light, you will find out what it is you need to do.